Deep in the mountains of southern France lies a fortress forgotten to time. Built during the interwar years between the Great War and the Second World War, its purpose was to hold back an inevitable Italian invasion. Inside the mountain, long tunnels connect living accommodation for the garrison to the fighting blocks on the surface. The cornerstone of the fort is a monument to modern engineering. Two twin cannons set in rotatable and retractable turrets. The twin 135mm cannon weighs 163 tons, and the twin 75mm weighs 265 tons. That's around the weight of 5 Tiger tanks. The fortress was impervious to attack from any direction, even by gas. This video is going to be a tour of every inch of the fort, from the living quarters to the power generation room, all the way to the inside of the retractable turrets. So grab a snack and a cup of tea, because this is going to be an interesting video. Let's start from the beginning. Earlier this year, I put out a call for people to suggest to me locations to visit around Europe. One email I received was from a volunteer of a group looking after Monte Grosso, the fort this video is about. One morning I met up with Tristan, the contact, who offered to pick me up and take me to the fort. On the way there, we stopped in the town of Sospel to get some food before continuing the long journey to the fort. In the past, the town was divided into two. The river passes through the town, marking the old border between France and Italy. After some conflicts, the border now lies to the east, 5 kilometers away. The town of Sospel is one of the largest towns on the border. It was around this town that a large section of the Alpine line, otherwise known as the Little Maginot Line, was constructed. France in the late 1920s knew that it could not win another war of aggression from Germany. The Great War had brought France to its knees. With combined superiority of material and manpower, the Allied command was able to push back the Hun and end the war on the Western Front. Germany's economy was larger than France's and had almost twice the total population. If another war was to happen, France would struggle to go on the offensive. French planning for a future war was based on the war of the long duration. Hold tight and wait for help, while the tide of enemy forces gets broken down on defensive lines. The German economy could not match that of the combined Allied High Command. The choice for a series of defences along the border was made to accommodate this new type of warfare. The Maginot Line was one of these defences. It was thought to be so impregnable that it alone would be a deterrent for war. We all know how that ended. You can see in the background footage that all this time we have been heading upwards. The entrance to the fort is at 3,800 feet above sea level, with the highest point being 4,200 feet. Look at that little dot. That is where we're going. While the fortifications in the Alpine line are not as extreme as those seen on the German border, these series of forts have something the North doesn't have: the terrain. The mountainous nature of this region made it difficult for an aggressor to maneuver forces through the area. Supply units would be challenged by the low infrastructure and narrow winding roads. Getting tanks through this area would be a massive challenge. The Commission of Defense invested 3 billion French francs into the Maginot Line. The Alpine line only had 434 million francs invested, of which 40 million were invested in the fort you're seeing today. 10% of that cost was just on the access road. The French border with Italy had to use their limited funds to their maximum efficiency. Depth in defense was used to lower spending. You see, unlike the Maginot Line, where the forts were built in a line along the border, in the Alpine line the forts were built along valley passes. While the helicopter footage you're seeing was recorded in Cannes, which is further down the coast, you still get the idea. We have now arrived at the residence for the fort. This building was not complete before the start of the Second World War. The idea was to have a nice accommodation for the garrison of the fort to live in during peacetime, because, as you're about to see, the inside of the fort is not that fun. Not all the forts in the Alpine line area were built in the interwar years. Some forts date back to the 17th century. Older forts underwent refitting and modernization. The forts around Sospel vary in complexity. Some are merely a machine gun emplacement. Others are vast forts of underground tunnels dug out of rock. The bigger forts had sleeping quarters, kitchens, backup power generators, fuel and ammo storage. Some facilities even had narrow gauge track for moving heavy goods inside the long corridors connecting the fighting blocks to the main areas. There were only 5 Alpine passes between France and Italy that were passable by motor vehicle, not including the coastal road. That is why most of the weapons in the forts around Sospel are anti-infantry focused. Machine guns, mortars and artillery. After another short drive, we have arrived at the main and only entrance to the fort, ignoring escape hatches. The main entrance is a drawbridge, and a small door to the side. This is the layout of the fort. It's going to help you keep track of roughly where I'm filming. Anyway, I'm going to be quiet now and I'm going to let the fort do the talking for me.
Tout foutu dedans.
Non,
Bah regarde.
mais non,
Ah si. Voilà, si.
non. Oh les cons. Ah oui, d'accord.
Yeah, so it's very thick steel and then there's concrete on top of it too.
Yeah. Oh no.
Almost 80 years on, it's still doing its job, keeping out gits.
Les pièces qu'après ils tombent sur les barreaux. Tiens, merci. Non, mais c'est un camion qui a jeté, c'est pas possible.
Bah ouais, je pense aussi. Ouais. Parce que là, c'est quand même très très clean pour avoir jeté tout ça là-bas comme ça. So here you have something to shoot. So usually it's closed like this, and then it goes like this. You can just open it and shoot from here. And so you have a lot of space. And so what I was talking about is this one. You can drop a grenade here, and it goes directly into the pit. So if anyone will fall in, they will still get some grenade on their faces, so pretty dead. Here is just a bed with a desk to work, and here, if you push on again, here is the observation spotting tower.
So we got to the top of the ladder now, we're in the pillbox that we saw earlier, and I must say I think Francois is really tall because I have no clue how he saw out these things. I'm not exactly tall myself, but in a shrimp, and my eye line is around there. So he's definitely standing on tippy toes and maybe had a block or two underneath.
And you can see it's still until there. Here it's concrete, here it's still steel. And so the whole part is very, very, very heavy. And you can see up there, the way they got it here with a screw.
Oh, for
So yeah. And so the windows weren't that open. We had episcopes. So basically it allowed people to see without being able to get shot
Oh, I see.
in the head, which is pretty nice.
Tristan has informed me that this is a part of an elevator that takes you. It doesn't work anymore, but it's a platform that can go up and down. So I didn't need to use the ladder if the elevator was working. But that's very interesting. So Mr. Well, I don't know, Pierre guarding this fort could just, from down here, just go zzz, up there to his guard post. That's pretty cool.
This is a container for spreading the cartridge coming off the gun.
Oh, so they would come down from above?
Yes. Okay. And it was sealed hermetically because the fume coming from the shell very toxic.
The fumes from the shell.
Oui.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So until the battle was over, they didn't open this. The combat fumes are vented out of the fort.
Same here again. Another.
Yeah, here you have filters.
The filter in the...
Yeah, you can go there. Just speak up for this.
Oh, okay.
It's okay, go.
Okay. My head's not near nothing. Okay. Yeah.
So all the block was was sealed. This is one of the two emergency exits of the fort. So in case of a need of
To escape the fort, you can go there.
See, very heavily armored as well. You got to turn that.
this one release the
Oh, sorry, that's the hinge. Yep.
yes.
Yeah, 1, 2, and then.
All the other side.
Oh yeah, you could do it
It can
either way.
operate in the
You could just
way.
remove the whole door.
Yes. And the outside, we can see this later. There is another door and a green.
Fence. A big fence. On the side, on the other side.
Okay.
Voilà. Some toilets.
I just have a peek down there. Like, I can see one of them was smashed off, and then you just got a pit of. I'm not going to question it. Yeah.
People love to destroy things. Here, this is mantelet. Je sais pas comment dire en anglais.
Oh, the mantle. You get mantle. Mantlet.
There was 275
millimeter cannon.
but this was comment on dit?
Récupéré. Was retrieved by someone. So yeah, back in the day, as I told you, there was no tree at all. So it was a free site.
Yeah, good view lines over the valley down below.
Yeah, exactly.
En gros, pour expliquer le fonctionnement.
Two cannons.
Yes.
Each cannon is protected by MG there. Like there is a cannon here, and you cannot access the cannon by this because you will be shot at before. Okay.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
there is an observation bell, like the one we climbed on in the main entrance to spot enemies.
Et il y a deux fosses.
Yeah, and there is two pits like in the front of the fort to prevent people to attack the.
And the emergency exit is just in between us.
Between the two pits, there is the emergency exit that we saw just below.
Just below. Just below.
Ah, so just below here,
Yes.
the emergency exit from earlier.
Yes. In the pit.
Okay.
In the pit.
In hall, en fait, sur chaque créneau de tir, t'as un logement, t'as un lance-grenade en fait. Normalement.
Oui, celui-ci.
So drop a grenade down there.
Yeah, yes.
This one was for the expanded cut ridge, and this one was for horizontal periscope.
Okay, so yeah, understood. Okay. And it ends below where we showed you with a large door.
Oh, and is that the just water
The
sitting there?
other one.
Somebody put it there.
Là, il y avait un truc de jumelé qui peut être montré.
Yeah, so this is the one to protect the entrance, like I showed you. Like you can spot the car far away.
And avant, il y avait, before there was a rail with a magazine. Yeah, but the rail was stolen.
Oh yeah, and on all the cannon were water cooled. Et les MG aussi. Les MG2.
Ah. Oh, so these would have been the tanks for it, you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Water tanks.
And here, the pipe for it. And yeah, for the MG.
For the MG.
And the outer rail.
The
C'est le canon.
Le canon de l'air. Okay, it's over this one.
What's at the end of this hallway?
Oh, yeah, we can go there if you want.
No, I'm just curious.
That's another. Ah, mais là aussi, il passe les mecs.
Oui,
c'est un peu chiant, mais. Same as in the entrance, Osford, with the.
Oh yes, another.
Hotel where you can enter with the elevator.
So this will be the observation cupola again.
Yes.
And it's got the elevator to go up, down.
Et ça dit. Non, c'est bon, ça a d'autres. Parfait. Progress. Non, mais je pense que celui-là où il est mis.
Ouais, il prend son nom.
Il prend son nom.
Ouais. Bon courage, gros.
So now from the other side, people will not be able to come in.
Yeah.
Be it, murderous Italians or just people that want to get in here nowadays to spray paint and, I don't know, still copper.
Yeah, exactly. It's far better with lights.
Yeah. Filter room.
Et la chauffe-lingerie.
And that is a lot of filters. I do not even want to think about moving those 400 kilogram filters. Do you know if during wartime, sorry, peacetime, the filters were active or they've been turned off?
Turned off.
Okay, so it's only during wartime then there would be.
When the fans are active, the noise is absolutely huge.
Deafening.
There is no need to talk here between the fans. Absolutely impossible. Impossible. There is two fans this way, another one here, and no, that's all.
Okay. Just so many filters.
La cuisine, c'est le gasoil. C'est une lumière gasoil.
So we are going to be teaching again, just to explain a little bit more what's in it.
Nice, so back in the kitchen.
Gasoil ovens.
Pas gasoline, hein, c'est.
Gasoil.
Ah, gasoil.
Gasoil.
This was pipe here, and this was the injector for gasoil.
Did you say gas or gasoline?
Gasoil. Like diesel.
Diesel, maybe?
Like diesel, yeah, diesel fired cookers.
Yes.
Ah.
Ici, c'est la grande, là, je vais prendre une idée pour faire écouter la
Okay,
scène.
that's where you wash the dishes. So you have a small thing going downstairs to let the water flow.
Là, du coup, il y a la cuisine, la chambre froide et bien
The fridge, basically.
Yep.
Or the refrigerator.
Ironically, it was one of the warmest rooms we went in.
Yeah. So maybe the fridge or and the general storage. Your food
Mind the shelves
and your foods.
and my foots. Okay, further into the fort, the generator room.
Yeah.
Those are big generators.
So those are marine generators, so made for big ships.
Mais spécialement pour les forts.
And forts.
And forts, knowing how much France spent on forts, they probably designed the generator first for the fort and then stuck it in a ship.
It was just manufactured by a company that is specialized in naval generators. So yeah.
So how many generators are there? 4?
5.
5?
There are 4 generators and one only for starting the 4 generator. So 5 in total.
Just don't touch this.
Asbestos. Okay.
So just don't touch it. So as we told you, they just fucked up everything to get the copper. So everything is basically wrecked around, and we just managed to bring one back here. This is the one we worked on the most. So it's pretty nice, honestly, right now.
Are you hoping to get it back in running condition?
We hope so.
How much horsepower was it again?
100 and... C'était combien la puissance de truc 150 je crois? Oui, 150.
150 chevaux?
Ouais.
So 150 horsepower per generator.
Really?
À 600 tours minute.
That's 600 round per minute.
A 600 RPM.
Yeah. And this is the one used to start the 400.
So this was the mini generator for firing up the other 4 generators.
You could turn it. Right now it's not possible. Use just something. You can make it turn back. You smell them.
And did you mention there were water tanks?
No, it's
No?
diesel tanks.
Oh, diesel for the,
Yeah.
I suppose right next to the generator room.
Yeah, if you
Yep.
you can see the size of them.
Oh, I cannot emphasize the size of them with a camera.
The yellow one is only the oil.
Oh, and this is oil. Yellow is oil.
Yellow is oil.
Red is diesel.
When you say yellow, would that be like lubricant for the engines?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know like old engines just guzzled lubricant oil.
You know what? You know how to interface this with the size? I just walk up to the end of the tank if you want to. This is one thing. This is 2 things. 3. And finally 4.
And you are around like easily 10 meters away from me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13 meters. And then you have like 2.5 meters of height.
And it's quite deep as well.
1, 2, and 3 meters, let's say. So yeah. pretty big.
Humongous volume.
Yeah.
For cooling the generator.
Oh, so all this water. Hold on, let's put the focus on this. Right. All the way down there. Another like 13 meters. Same width as earlier. All the way, maybe 5 or 6 meters by 2.5 tall. Just for cooling the generator.
Yes. So they have a huge inertia